everyone, this is Lomi, and today I'm doing some experimentation with adding scars to a BJD. If the depiction of scarring isn't comfortable for you, you might want to skip this one. Otherwise, here we go. I started out by testing some methods on one of the bad head caps I'd cast for Rune and kind of messed up between drilling and dye. It's already a wreck, so nothing I did would ruin it. I've never done any kind of scar effects for my dolls, though I remembered people talking about popular methods of doing them and decided to test a few based on what I had handy. I started with some molding paste mixed with paint and some without paint, and found either way it gave very raised and heavily textured results, which weren't quite what I was hoping for. That light spot down there is some epoxy filling a bubble in this head cap, not part of this project. Above it is the test patch using white glue mixed with paint, which is the most popular method of creating fake scars that I've seen. I'd used the more orange shade of my Vallejo skin tone paints for the molding paste and thought it was too yellow, so for this I used the lighter one. And just because I had it handy, I also used the same paint mixed into some Mod Podge decoupage glue, which lies because this is definitely not a matte finish. Even though I added the same amount of paint to the white glue and the Mod Podge turned out a lot lighter. One big deciding factor for me was durability. All of these options are water-based, so they're resin safe and easy to remove, but I didn't want them to be too easy. I found the molding paste had a texture similar to foam, and it would scrape off and crumble fairly easily, but only where it was scraped. But it was also really easy to dent. The white glue was super easy to peel up, and once it started peeling, the whole thing came off with very little effort. The Mod Podge ended up proving the most durable, being the hardest to scrape up, and also being stretchy instead of peely, which means even if something does get scraped and starts to come up, most of the rest of the overlapping scars can probably be saved by trimming the part that gets damaged. Every method left behind a little pale residue, but that's easy to remove with water. With all that in mind, I decided to stick with the Mod Podge. I poured about half a teaspoon of the glue into a medicine cup and added some paint, which I didn't shake well enough because the first drop I got was mostly binder with just a little pigment. Oops. I got a much fatter and better drop afterward, and I think that'll probably be enough for the look I want. I mixed it up with a wooden stick and laid down a towel to protect my doll. Working on Rune is always an exercise in frustration, because now that he's all together, I'm reminded of how bad the process of dyeing him went. He's really uneven in color until I have time to do body blushing, but at least he's together, and I've decided to try to be happy about that. Since all this is water-based and the paint is a lighter color than his resin so it won't stain, I don't do anything special to prepare the doll and just start applying the paint and glue combination directly to the resin. Since I'll be giving him body blushing at some point, putting sealant on over the top of the scars will help make them more durable later on. I knew the wooden stick would be too big to apply the marks I wanted, and while I saw a lot of people use toothpicks, I decided to use one of the dental picks I use for sculpting to gently draw glue along the surface of the resin and create the marks. The metal doesn't ever have to touch the resin. Just using the tip of the pick in the glue lets me spread it out to fine points and thin lines. Because I don't want it to be likely to catch or peel up, I decided to keep everything focused on his upper back, so it's well away from the torso joint and not likely to get rubbed when I'm moving or posing the doll. One of the less fun parts of the project was looking at photos of real people's scars to get ideas of how these would look and what color they would be. To make these more realistic, I might add a little pastel around them to add dimension at some point, but the raised texture and pale color are reasonably accurate for old injuries. As scars age, they tend to get paler. If these were newer, they would need a lot more pink or a red tone to them. But I've kind of made a mess of my doll character timeline and wanted these to be old, like book 2 of a 6-book series type injuries. Spoilers. I used to try to have my dolls shelled all around a specific period in my story timeline, but that kind of went out the window at some point, and now I've got dolls for characters who never even cross paths. And when I get around to making a few other book characters into dolls, they won't fit into the timeline well either. At this point, the collection is mostly late series styling for the characters I've made into dolls, but when I make Garum, I don't want old Garum, I want younger Garum, and that won't really make sense with all the other characters being late series incarnations, but it's fun, I'm having fun, and really that's all that matters. The last book in Rune for All series is out today, which means their story is pretty well complete, and having the characters around as dolls means having permanent versions of them, and that's been really comforting as I move into a new phase, which is their adventure being over. I still have some side stories I want to go back and write, and one of the nice things about being an author is that I can. I can go back and revisit the world and the characters whenever I want. But I also don't want to be one of those authors who drags a story on forever, and coming to terms with saying goodbye to a series is a really unique experience that I don't think I've ever heard any writers really talk about. You spend so much time with these characters, with their story living in your head, that being done and saying the end is a lot like saying goodbye to friends who've been there for some of the most formative parts of your life, and you don't know if you'll ever see them again going forward. So it's nice to have the dolls, something tangible and permanent left behind. A solid reminder of everything that's already been accomplished as I move on to writing a new series with new characters and make new friends all over again. At this point, I think all the important, major things I wanted to do with this doll are done. He still needs a few finishing touches, like a new wig since his head is a different shape now, and the old one doesn't fit very well or lay nicely. And I'll want to do blushing and make new clothes, but for now I'm content to give him a rest and work on some of my other projects, while I enjoy the fact that he's finally back together, looks like himself despite all his imperfections, and that I can finally put him up on my shelf, right in the middle, and he stands perfectly, right where he always belonged. And just in case my collection was looking a little too put together, there's everybody else, half done or falling over. Oh well, I'll get to them eventually. That's all for today though. Thanks for watching. Bye.